Good afternoon. Welcome to the Financial Services Leadership event. And we're now Wednesday of reInvent. It's kind of feels like halftime. Like it's been an exciting first half. We're looking forward to the second half. And we'll look at this as somewhat of maybe a halftime show. And in American football, we often bring out marching bands and cheerleaders and such. We're not going to do that. For football and the rest of the world, they generally bring you to the studio audience and you analyze the one or no goals that were scored. Here, we're very fortunate to be able to share with you the experiences of the CIOs of four of the most iconic financial services companies in the world. And they will be, over the next 60 minutes, they will be sharing their experiences in what they'll be doing with what they're doing with their companies, both currently and moving forward. And my name is Frank Fallon. I am the leader of the AWS Worldwide Financial Services team. And I can't think of a more exciting place to be, reInvent in Las Vegas, or a more exciting event than to talk about the future of financial services and how AWS and our customers are really reshaping that. And so I feel very fortunate to be working with all of you. I think you should feel very fortunate to be in this industry. I assume everybody here is within the financial services industry or has something to do with it. If you're part of like automotive or mining, you can leave now. Probably won't be that interesting. And by the way, we're going to be sharing some very secret industry stuff, so you're really not allowed to work through that. But we feel that the engagement with the cloud of financial services is now in full force. And as demonstration of that, if you look at the screen, you see organizations that are financial enterprises, you see financial startups, and you see ISVs that are focused on the financial services industry. They come from all corners of the globe and from every significant segment of the financial services industry. And our speakers today will really represent a lot of that cross-section that represents everyone that's in this audience and what you're working within. And we've just experienced another tour de force of Andy Jassy at his keynote address, talking about an incredible array of new services and enhancements to our services. And what we've seen in this industry is relatively quick adoption of that. And proof again that the cloud is becoming the new normal for financial services are some of the examples that you may have seen in other sessions that have been given throughout the week. As you see on the screen, a number of organizations around the world are working with AWS in areas for tier one applications, with often customer-centric data, using unstructured data for analytics, building out centers that allow them to both consolidate and even close data centers, and ultimately build out applications that do what we all need to do and are obligated to do, which is to delight our customers, and really, in our case, really have a sense of being responsible for the financial well-being of all of our customers, whether they be individual, commercial, and whether we're selling them financial services or insurance services. This is our charter, and we believe that AWS is an important component of working with you in that way. So what does the future hold for financial services? So we're seeing an incredible array of innovation Send things like biometric authentication, virtual assistants, predictive loan offers, virtual reality trading, AI-enabled claims processing, ML-enabled fraud detection, and a number of other things that really were not really possible to do in the kind of scale and the kind of capabilities that the cloud now enables. And the technologies that are enabling those are ones that many of you are quite familiar with. And being able to utilize things like microservices and serverless architectures and containers and data lakes to be able to provide these kind of capabilities to your customers. Now, it's all very easy for myself and AWS to talk about the art of the possible, but all of us who are practitioners understand that moving to the cloud has its challenges. And probably one of the largest challenges that are faced are cultural challenges and organizational challenges. You'll hear some of our speakers talk about how they're working through those challenges, but we believe the cloud actually does promote the flattening of organizations and enabling IT and business to have a more natural harmony in working together. So I think what we have on tap is a strong representation of great leaders from Liberty Mutual Insurance, National Australia Bank, Fidelity Investments, and FICO, and the CIOs of each one of those companies will share their stories about where they are with their cloud journey and some of their plans for the future and what they see the promise and what they can bring to their organizations and to their customers by working to the cloud. So I want to introduce our first speaker. John Heverin is CIO and Senior Vice President of Commercial Insurance for Liberty Mutual Insurance. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Frank. I feel like I need to stage an intervention. If this is the most exciting thing that you can be doing in Vegas, dude, we need to talk. Tonight we'll go out and show you some things. Not all of you. So my name is John Heverin. I am the CIO for Liberty Mutual's Global Risk Solutions Group. That's our commercial-focused part of the business. For those of you who may not be familiar, Liberty Mutual is a $40 billion property and casualty insurer that operates on a global basis. So there's a lot of reach, a lot of disparate challenges, and I'm excited because we've really been on a journey over the last 3-4 years. And every year I come here and it's just more interesting and more exciting in terms of what's being announced. I thought today's announcement by Andy in some of the areas was exactly typical, what we needed, and looking forward to tomorrow as well. So for us, we got started back in 2016. We did some early learning, some experimentation, and by the end of that year, we had placed a big bet that we were going to go all in on AWS. Because in the start of that year, we really had a situation that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with either today or have been, and you're in a similar place along the journey as we are, in that we had an on-prem compute environment that was really characterized by a lot of manual processes. Took a long time to get an environment going, to get people up and productive in terms of writing software to support our business. We have a lot of legacy solutions, and so that was also very cumbersome. And it really led to a situation where we found that all the steps that you would go through to get an environment up and going, just the basic stuff before you're even writing software, was a huge problem for us. Right? It took weeks. It was very error-prone and highly manual. So for us, we decided to go broad. So we looked across all of our business units and business segments and got started at the same time. We didn't hold back and say, well, we're going to focus here and then grow and learn. We did it in a pretty broad way, and that was very intentional. So when we started out, we had roughly about 2% of our workloads there. Today, we're at 20%. And that varies. Some are higher, some are lower. But what I'd say is every individual segment and business unit is solving the problems that they need to solve in the order and priority. And then there's a lot of sharing and learning that's going back and forth. So one thing I would encourage folks is don't limit it, right? Go broad. Do your due diligence and your research, but go broad early. So, in terms of where we stand right now, we've been the typical thing, right? We've got sandboxes, we have dev environments, we have a lot of non-production workloads in AWS, but half of our computing that is in AWS is actually running production. And sometimes when you hear people talk, that's not the case, right? You can put a lot of compute and a lot of storage and a lot of services in non-production in AWS for learning, but at some point you gotta start using it. So for our future growth, it really is here. That's where all the rest of it is. We are at kind of our bubble inflection point, meaning we have provisioned more than we have deprovisioned at this point, but we're pretty close, if not at the peak of that, and bringing that down, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So if I think about the types of workloads that we're supporting, we're doing a lot of different and varied things. And to give you an example, one of them is in a contact center application where we use a number of AWS technologies to completely offload the rental car process for our consumer customers. So when they call in to find out, how do I get my rental car when my car is in the shop being repaired, it's all happening through AWS and Lex and Poly, and there's chatbot technology that's sitting behind that. In addition, document management for a company like ours, like I'm sure many of you, we have literally billions and billions of documents. So we have two things going on. One, we built a pretty robust API layer that is proprietary to us, but it basically insulates all of the applications, claims, policy, underwriting applications, and basically isolates and abstracts them from the actual document stores so we can migrate those document stores. And we right now have about 1 billion documents in AWS on Alfresco, and that's kind of our pattern, and we're going to be aggressively pursuing the rest of that next year. If I think about data and AI and some of the things that you heard this morning from Andy on SageMaker and some of the lower and higher levels than that, this is an exciting area. One of the examples of things that we built an application, a platform for our internal data scientists, actuaries, and very skilled analysts in which they can provision their own compute environments themselves. So we've taken that kind of self-service mentality beyond just the developer, beyond just the builders, but also to the sophisticated business users. So business users can provision a 100-node GPU compute environment to run a model and to do some training, and they can do that all on their own without any IT intervention. And when they do that, they make a series of choices, and they know exactly how much it's going to cost per hour and how it'll be deprovisioned and when it'll be deprovisioned if they want to schedule that. And then finally, an interesting experiment that we did is with a platform we call WorkGrid. This is taking some internally developed software, and we actually formed a separate company inside of Liberty, in which we have a couple dozen folks, and they've written the software in AWS natively, and we're actually out selling this. We have a handful of beta customers on it today, and this is a digital assistant. So for the first use cases for employees, we use it internally, but now other companies are starting to use it, large companies like yourselves, and if there's interest in that, I'm not here to necessarily sell it, but happy to talk about it if anyone is interested. So let me get into some specifics here and give you a sense of, so what does this all mean? So we have a number of different kind of distinct patterns. So one I'd say is this just native AWS. So we have about 250 applications built natively in AWS. And half of those are things where we're refactoring and rewriting existing applications or components of those natively in AWS services. The other half is greenfield, right? Brand new, born in the cloud types of applications. And roughly 20 to 30% of that is currently in production, with the rest, some of these are in progress types of things. Another big area of workloads that we run are Pivotal Cloud Foundry. So we have a number of Pivotal Cloud Foundry applications that we have built, both greenfield and again migrations, taking components of applications and migrating those. And that's been a really kind of interesting and easy thing to kind of build those, and then migrate those directly to AWS. And finally, Docker. We have a number of Docker instances, and that really helps to support our tech modernization. Also, it's a useful pattern when you're using off-the-shelf software that doesn't run natively in the cloud, and to take certain parts of that directly to AWS. On the right is a little bit of the bubble I talked about in terms of we've provisioned more in AWS than we've deprovisioned, but that mix is shifting. So where are we now? Today, we really are native cloud-based applications in many areas. We can build an application and an environment, a robust environment, in under a day, minutes to deploy. Many of the teams are deploying daily, some even multiple times a day. We have really prioritized our secure DevOps and CI/CD pipelines, pushing teams to really adopt test-driven development, canary testing, and some of those methods. And I would encourage you to kind of, if your teams aren't exploring those, to look at those. Look at the Netflix OSS stack, which we rely on and use heavily as well, chaos engineering, some of those types of things. It is real, and it's part of what I really love about AWS, is it really has allowed us to take this long, complex time frame to get builders building and really compress that. So bottom line, what have we learned? Be bold. Plan a lot less, write more software. It's hard to do for companies like us, but it really pays off. Set some limits, draw some lines in the sand, but be careful about applying too much of your legacy thinking and embedding that into the cloud. Take some risks. Think big. We set a series of bold, audacious goals, right? Automate, be like Amazon. Automate and instrument as much as you possibly can. And then finally, test and learn. Embrace the MVP thinking. You may find some resistance with your business partners. Educate them, get them thinking, and get them on board. It is the most transformational thing I think you can do. So with that is my time, and I want to hand it back to Frank.
Thank you, John. Really great information, great sharing, and I really like the advice at the end. So our next speaker wins the award for the speaker that's come the longest distance, all the way from Melbourne, Australia. The CIO of NAB is Yuri Miznik, and I'd like to introduce Yuri Miznik, tell his story.
Frank, thanks very much, and it's a great privilege to be here. Good afternoon. My name is Yuri Miznik. I run all the applications for National Australia Bank, which deliver services to our customers, to our banking colleagues as well. We want to talk about our transformation, what we've been doing with AWS in the last 12 months, and also how we're looking into the future. We are one of the 4 major banks in Australia. We have 160 years of history, and we serve about 9 million customers. So effectively, if something happens with our technology, a big chunk of country stops working and have challenges accessing financial services. So we have to be reliable, we have to be secure, and we have to make sure we work all the time. We're also Australia's largest business bank, and we serve different set of customers all the way from startups to a very large enterprises. And so this is a story of how we're trying to transform our 160-year-old company. So the big challenge for us is that we're big. 160 years means we accumulated a lot of complexity and entanglement. We provide more than 600 products across 10 channels. We have 2,500 applications written in 30 different frameworks, languages, and stacks. And since we started in 1967 with technology, with one big mainframe, which we still have, amazingly, we made a lot of tactical technology decisions which were sort of incremental, which created much more legacy, much more entanglement, and a lot of technical debt which we had to deal with. And right now we know that the pace is changing. Customers expect us to do more, to move faster, to adjust to what they want, and to innovate. And we understand that's a problem for us. We need to deliver great experience to our customers, and we want technology to be a key enabler for that. So we're actually simplifying. We're simplifying our business. We are decommissioning and re-engineering about half of our 600 products on the business side. And also we're spending a lot of time, a lot of effort industrializing our technology foundations. So we're spending about $4.5 billion over the course of 3 years to redo, re-engineer almost everything inside NAB. And industrialization of technology, the whole idea of this is to give us more speed, more agility, make much better, much more scalable technical foundations. So how we do it? And that's the most interesting part. So we built, developed, written, and just launched our new technology strategy. And it's actually a public cloud-first technology strategy. So what does it mean? That's a great set of words. That means a very simple thing. Every engineering team who wants to build something on premise now requires special approval. Every engineering team who wants to build on the cloud can do it as much as they want. That's a massive pivot for us, and the massive pivot of how we're thinking about technology. It also enables us to build much more modern architectures. We're innovating a lot around data. We're doing data natively in the cloud right now, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. It also allows us to attract very good talent from across the globe, and also use all this amazing range of AWS services which AWS provides. So this is our journey. We've started in 2013, and we moved all the way from dev test to digital, now to material. Obviously, we did a very close consultation with our regulators because we are a very heavily regulated company and industry. And today we have more than 100 production workloads on AWS with customer data, providing important critical material customer services. And by the end of 2020, we're planning to have 35% of our apps running on public cloud. And in the next 12 months, we're moving another 200 to 300 to AWS. So that's the speed and that's the pace. And we see this exponential curve of adoption growing. So none of this happened by accident. A key thing for us was have this transformation in our culture and our thinking. So Newton's first law of motion says things remain at rest or continue to move at the same speed without external force. And to change, accelerate, or change direction of NAB requires a lot of force. So this force is our people. We invested a lot of time and effort in building and learning and educating our internal teams. But also we've attracted quite a great set of leaders in the last 12 months from all over the world, from digital companies, from Amazon, from Microsoft, from eBay, from other big financial service institutions who are thinking differently. We also realigned our organization. In the beginning, the AWS was happening sort of as a grassroots. So we had a lot of technology people who were very excited about doing things with cloud, but the organization was not aligned around it. So we started from the top. Our board, our CEO, our executive leadership team actually spends a lot of time learning new tech. They spend a lot of time in the Valley, spend a lot of time in Seattle, talking to Andy Jassy, talking to Werner Vogels, and continuing to do that. So that gives them understanding of what cloud is, what do we do, what AWS provides us, and how we can learn from this. We've also established a thing called NAB Cloud Guild. And this is a training program. In 6 months, we trained 3,000 people on AWS, internal people. And I'm hugely proud that we now have 350 AWS-certified engineers working in my team, which is amazing. And it all happened very rapidly. We also changed the way how we organize ourselves. We learned from different companies. We looked at what Spotify was doing, what ING was doing. We looked at what Netflix and Amazon were doing. So we reorganized ourselves around services. We give the services full control of development, so design, development, and running of services. So we're starting to implement a real DevOps. We're giving them all the tools to be able to support and manage the systems in production. And we're also building a great career path for builders. We introduced roles like distinguished engineer, like site reliability engineering, and we actually encourage our people and engineers to grow. So obviously, we are a bank. So we're an institution of public trust. That means we need to be 100% safe and secure. And safety, security, and compliance is our top priority. But we cannot do it and stop moving faster. So how do we do it together? We built two things. One is called Cloud Adoption Standards and Techniques. We call it CAST. This is pretty much a set of controls which we created to consciously measure, assess, and manage risk for applications working in AWS. The best thing about it is actually we baked this CAST into our process, and we automated it. That means every account, every infrastructure element which is provisioned in AWS have up-to-date controls deployed automatically. We also did it together in consultation with our regulators. So our regulators are happy that we are doing things and they understand what's in this framework, and we constantly evolve it. The second big piece which we looked at is continuous compliance framework. So we actually used all AWS native services. We used Lambdas, Kinesis, SNS, SQS to build detective controls, real-time detective controls in their infrastructure. So essentially, every time something changes on AWS, there's an event which we catch. And there's a bunch of business logic which assesses this change. And if the change is non-compliant, it either shuts down the service or it automatically deploys additional controls. It actually allows us to move this. Security is a massive pain for any bank. So right now, we can actually deploy security controls into the environment in about 45 seconds. It took us previously 3 weeks to do that. So from 3 weeks to 45 seconds. And it gives us, our engineers, confidence that they're doing things right. So we're moving 35% of workloads into public cloud. How we do it? It's very similar to others. We have a big chunk of work where we actually refactor and rehost. We manage and we change a little bit in our existing workloads to make them more scalable, more reliable, and more automated. We're also using Amazon Managed Services. If you haven't heard about it, look at this. It's a great thing. It allows us to remove this heavy lifting of managing the infrastructure for standard packaged applications. And it frees up a lot of time and effort for our developers. And of course, we're building cloud-native things on AWS. We're using all native technologies. We are using a lot of Dynamo, Aurora, and RDS for our data layers. We use Kinesis and Lambda for moving data and processing, so we're actually very heavily into serverless right now. And we're also looking at things like Amazon Connect to potentially migrate and improve our call center software. The other big thing which we did, we created the thing called Launchpad, which effectively allows us to automatically, consistently provision environments to our developers. So all of this helps us move things faster, and it also helps our business to start thinking about how we're going to offer different, in-the-moment, reliable, relevant experience to our customers, and how do we deliver financial services seamlessly. So last 12 months was a massive journey for us, but we're just starting. We're accelerating. Our purpose is to back the bold to move Australia forward, and the partnership with AWS massively help us to fulfill that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yuri. Excellent. Thank you, Yuri. Great set of vignettes. I could hear that story again and again. But time for our next speaker, and we're very honored to have the CIO of Fidelity Investments, personal investing line of business, Roger Stiles. Roger?
So good afternoon. I'm Roger Stiles. I work for Fidelity Investments, and as Frank mentioned, I'm the CIO of the personal investing division. Fidelity is a 72-year-old company. You guys know us pretty much as the retirement company. All in, we have over 30 million customers across the country and over $7 trillion of assets under administration that we manage for our customers and clients. I've been at the company 31 years, and through those years, I've seen a lot of change, right? I mean, we all see change, but not like the change that we've been seeing in these last few years. And arguably, what's happened with clearly the push of the cloud, but also just the way people work to leverage the cloud computing is something we have to embrace and really push forward. It's not something that we think we want to do just because we think it's the right thing to do. We need to do this because we want to be competitive. We're not a company that was born digital, and you see these other firms, you saw these fintechs that were displayed on the board here. We have to think differently about how we're going to compete with those players, yet we have legacy technologies to get there. One of the things that we did, I want to share with you guys and talk a little bit before we get into our cloud story, was specifically the way we work. So about 4 years ago, my team was really focused on how can we actually start to accelerate our delivery process. And we really went into our whole Scrum and Agile approach within the IT team. We started developing CI/CD pipelines, looking at automating our testing environments, our testing capabilities, and then really started trying to drive more of a true backlog-driven process of development. This progressed over the last few years, and I finally got my company president to really buy into this and realize that we can do this, but we need to do this in a different way, not just within IT, but within IT and the business. If you look at any of these startups, the reality of these startups is that they absolutely mash up the business and technology. You can't tell the difference between the two. So we've made a pretty bold change within the personal investing group. I have about 2,000 technologists. We have another 1,500 business people that we call in our home office. We implemented the Spotify model, and if those of you who are familiar with that, it's this concept of these tribes with chapters being the technology team members going into the tribes, into the actual squads being fundamentally a two-pizza team, and the whole intent is really focusing on customer obsession and trying to deliver value faster to the customer. So we started this in January this year, a huge transformation. I moved a good 130 plus of my technologists into these business roles, really moved everyone's cheese, got everybody kind of upset, but which meant we were probably doing the right thing. I'm here to say now, just in this 1 year or 11 months in, we've actually accelerated our reason you deploy is kind of a proxy for our delivery velocity. We've improved it by a good 50% this year alone, and that's just by going into a 2-week sprint model and really, trying to fundamentally follow that process. So while we did this, we realized, okay, this is great, and all along we also were looking at our cloud journey. Now, our cloud journey has been interesting. We're not quite at that point where we're going to take the big, giant leap like we did with the Spotify model, but we're getting there. So we're still early in our journey on cloud, but I've got one slide here that I'm going to speak to, and it'll just kind of give you an insight of where we're going. You look at the major components that we see in this digital world and the whole digital transformation, and the way I see it is, look, APIs are absolutely critical for us. You've got to have your customer data. You've got to know how to use that data. Cloud becomes clearly the platform that you want to leverage and use and drive on. But you've got to have automation. You've got to have security. You've got to have other components tree in there to make this happen. But at the end of the day, from a true digital strategy and really to put yourself into this space, you've got to have cloud at the very center, the very core of this. And what we found is driving this, we learned a lot. We learned a lot through this process. So number one, in the API world, we've had a legacy of APIs that we needed to actually modernize, get them to RESTful, get them to a lighter weight type of container process that we want to involve and build out a true API store to make it publish within the company so that others can leverage and build from that. We have these squads and the business teams, they want these APIs. It helps them actually go faster. So we found that really to be extremely important from an ecosystem perspective, as well as not only internally in Fidelity, but we have visions that we can definitely work externally with our own APIs, and we definitely want to do that as well. From a data perspective, we understand that data ends up being our IP. It actually is the most important thing that we have. So the analytics that go with it are extremely important, and what we found is running our own analytics that we needed to get them off-prem. So leveraging AWS, we're moving, for example, we have a big data lake that we're managing now, and we're loading over 1 billion web clicks a day into our AWS data lake. We're actually taking all of our customer calls, we record them, transfer them to text, push them in, and we're driving all types of intent models from them that we then feed back into our frontline associates that are on the phone, also then feeding into our websites through some of our virtual assistant capability. So we're driving this into our digital channels as well as our live channels to really try to increase that customer experience and provide a much better opportunity for our associates to get the right answer for our customers. Also, this sets up clearly more AI and ML. We're doing quite a bit. We've built a lot. I mean, all the stuff that was Andy mentioned today, quite a few new innovations. Arguably, we've built some of that stuff internally on our own. Wish we had that stuff 5 years ago, but we'll definitely look to incorporate and leverage it going on. Now, from a cloud perspective, the thing that we really saw that was most important for me, the resiliency aspect of it's absolutely important for us. Going from CapEx to OpEx is the one thing that we really want to leverage and try to make happen for us. Looking at availabilities, building systems in a different way. One of the things we found is, building from scratch or translating existing applications, building them in a 12-factor model, but understanding that you have to build them in a way where, okay, you have multiple regions, multiple availability zones. You've got to be continuously available. How to design for that. And then going from an on-prem world to an off-prem world in a really risk-managed way, building our front-end systems so that we can migrate part of the traffic to AWS while we're still running other parts of the traffic on-prem at the same time, giving us really an ability to manage that risk and move and migrate over time so that we get our risk controls in place, understand how to leverage the capability, and learn. I mean, this has been a huge learning journey for us. We have about 200 associates right now that have AWS certifications. We've got over 500 associates that are working in our development sandboxes right now out of our 2,000 technologists. So it's a good number. We're actually, I think, making some headway. But what we learn more than anything is with AWS and certainly with the cloud capabilities, we found out that our associates are the ones that we really need to focus on and invest in because the curiosity in creating a learning culture was so important for us to really get this thing up and moving. Now we have about 80 applications within the personal investing. So once again, personal investing is fidelity.com, 1-800-FIDELITY. This is you and me as individual investors. So we have about 80 applications right now, basically kind of split between our big data capabilities and obviously some of our website. We're gonna more than double that number next year. I think we'll end up with well over 200 apps by the end of next year, and then we'll work on the rest of our portfolio. We do have a challenge in front of us. We, just like a lot of these other firms, we do have a mainframe, so we've got to look at that strategy and figure out exactly how that's going to work. But we know that we're going to have to tackle that and work through that. Now, through all this, the other things that are important to remember is don't forget the automation aspect. The CI/CD, the DevOps pipeline. We heard about chaos testing, the antagonistic testing, building DevSecOps into your pipelines is actually extremely important. We're learning through that. It's a process, I would say that. But at the end of the day, security rules. I mean, no matter what we do, we have to be secure. We cannot compromise our customers' information. We cannot have any doubt from our customers that their information is secure and that we're providing them with the services that they need. So even as we work in this new model where we have these different squads working in, there are certain standards that are governed, that are managed, that they have to meet with. And probably the most important thing that I found with this model when we rolled out this Spotify model was technical debt. When I was the CIO and I had all the projects and was doing all the work, it was hard for me to get funding for technical debt. No one really wanted to embrace that. That was my problem because I was a CIO. But now that I've moved some of this out into the business leaders and now they own some of this, it's funny how now they're talking about, wow, we got to get rid of this technical debt. This is really a problem. So I think mission accomplished there. I've actually pushed on them to have a minimum of 20% of their backlog in the tribes focused on technical debt. Now we have others that actually need to do more because it's a target-rich environment. Let's put it that way. There's an opportunity. So in closing, what I'd say that it's a journey. We're still, we're learning. I want to come back next year, Frank. I'd like to be back up here next year and maybe tell a lot more about how much we've really progressed forward with the firm and how we're driving this. We've learned a lot along our ways. We've been very careful to get our standards set up and governed in the right way before we actually roll out these capabilities. So we've probably gone maybe in some cases slower than we maybe wanted to, but we've actually ensured that we've been safe and secure. And then finally, I think the last thing is invest in your talent. Your associates can learn this. Your engineers can learn this. They want to learn this. And I find I find this is probably the most energizing thing about working with the cloud technologies is we're just taking this legacy concept of infrastructure and making it code and implementing it in a way, and it's just allowing us to move so much faster, and it's energized the organization. So with that, I'll turn it back to Frank. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Great job. Thank you, Roger. Really appreciate you sharing your experiences. And you talked about the excitement that the Fidelity team is feeling around their implementation of AWS, and I was lucky enough to be invited to a little reception that we held together last night, and the energy and excitement in that room was very palpable and brought through again by Roger today, so thank you. Our final speaker is the CIO of FICO. FICO, we're probably all customers of FICO, either commercially or personally. They're a close partner of AWS, and so it's my pleasure to introduce Klaus Bolt, the CIO of FICO.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you. Yeah, so our journey is very similar to what you heard here from the other folks that has been up on stage. I joined FICO about 2.5 years ago. I had been CIO of other large-scale cloud companies before that was born in the cloud. So for me, it was a little bit of a culture shock to come into a company that historically have only been delivered software on-prem. We started our cloud journey about 4 years ago, and the cloud in that sense was we take our on-prem software, we move it into our data center, and voila, it's cloud. We had to take a little bit different approach as we started really looking at how we have to do this right from the get-go. So we historically have been delivering these clouds, or these services, I should say, on-prem with clients all over the world. We have about 6,000-7,000 banking customers globally. We run in different retail. We run in insurance companies. We run telcos. So we really have a broad set of clients, but they're all using our software in some way, shape, or form based on business intelligence that we have built, or the expertise over a series of years. So the way that we looked at the cloud was we needed to change the way that we deliver product, because a lot of our product that we deliver on-prem took us 6 to 24 months to deliver. We had very large-scale, 30 million plus lines of code type of solutions, and those you easily can't, you cannot easily just lift and shift into the cloud. So we had to look at the whole portfolio, figure out what do we still want to sell and keep on-prem for a period of time, what are the things that we can run in our data centers, and what are the things that we can move to the public cloud. We definitely adopted a cloud-first strategy, which now has become a cloud everywhere strategy that I'll talk a little more about what we mean by cloud everywhere. But going to the cloud-first strategy required that we actually had a change in terms of how we educated the internal team. What were the changes that the cloud would bring in terms of how we developed our software? What were the new standards that we had to think about? Because a lot of the things when we just develop on-prem software, like it would be the customer that will take care of disaster recovery, high availability, and monitoring. These are things when you run cloud operations that you have to make sure that you embed as part of your product and can run for our clients. We also wanted to make sure that this was done in a very cost-effective manner. And one of the things that we had to do was to ensure that the services that we were running on-prem or even in our own data centers when we went to the public cloud was more cost-effective. And just taking a lift and shift approach will not get you there in many cases. We actually have to utilize the functionality that the public cloud are giving you, and that means rewriting part, if not all, of your code. So that is something that you have to plan for. If it's obviously new products that we are bringing to market, it's fairly easy because there it's just a matter of training and ensuring that you understand how you build this software for the cloud. And we, as well as some of the other presenters here, have gone through and set a certain standards that you have to do and that you have to think about when you develop your software. And that has been training that we're rolling out to all of our development team. This is how you build cloud software. And we have about 12 to 13 items that you have to think about. Everything from monitoring to cost of goods sold to how you think about high availability or disaster recovery were actual examples. You also have to think about how you scale, right? In the on-prem model, you'll go in, you'll order more hardware, you'll have to capacity plan and all that good stuff. If you build for the cloud, you build so you can scale in a horizontal fashion. You build your software from the get-go and you think about how you utilize the services that's being provided in the public cloud. That's another piece that you have to get right from the get-go. And then, of course, it increases the velocity. If you utilize the services that AWS brings to market and you don't have to deploy that as you do in an on-prem or in your own data center, you will get and see speed of delivery. But you have to, again, focus on pieces of the automation framework that you put in place. You still have to do that likely for on-prem or if you ran it in your own data center, but these are pieces that you have to consider when you build your software. The global presence is extremely important to us. As I said, we serve clients all over the world. We have built our own data centers, or at least in co-location, in the US and in Europe. We have some in Asia Pac. But in order for us to keep up and deliver to our clients, who many has regulatory issues where data actually resides, it was simply not financially viable for us to build out data center locations all over the world. So by utilizing all the regions and the continuous rollout of regions that AWS will do, that helps us dramatically. It means that we actually can deploy our, what we call core framework, which is our platform, and then we build something called shared services, which really ties into everything like single sign-on, how we think about security, how we think about logging and monitoring, and we create an army that we roll into our platform. We set that whole thing up in less than 24 hours. Then we obviously have to test and validate, et cetera. But we guarantee at that point in time that's already built with PCI compliance, which is the last piece that's extremely important for us. We spend a lot of time when we run in our own data center or when we go on-prem, our customers spend a lot of time to certify whether that's HIPAA or PCI or any other audit compliance regulatory pieces that they have to adhere to. With AWS, a lot of the services that they provide, they out of the box certify. So all we get is an attestation from AWS, and we don't have to worry about that as part of the infrastructure. We have to worry about our IP and how we PCI certify that piece. And that obviously gives us a tremendous amount of leverage and also helps with the speed of how we can deliver our services. So we've been working with AWS for more than 2 years. We have a significant amount of live clients in various regions of the world. We are currently live in 6 regions. We have what we call My FICO, which is really your FICO score. And I do want to say that I cannot change your FICO score, so don't even ask me afterwards. That's a question I get the most. We run our marketing services in the cloud, and then we have built a platform. And the platform that we built is really built, our first generation was OpenShift platform. Our next generation is all built on Kubernetes and Docker. And one of the things that was very important for us is that we have to support both on-prem, our data center, and the public clouds. So we need to have the ability to transport solutions from the public cloud to our private cloud to potentially on-prem. And this is what I mean when I talk about cloud everywhere. It does require an architecture that allows for that. And we believe the Kubernetes Docker architecture will enable us to do that, to truly build our solution natively on the Kubernetes Docker platform that runs and is supported by the EKS on AWS. There's other services that other platforms that has all the standard K8 APIs that you then can take these solutions, and you still have to port some of the impact to the underlying API infrastructure, but you will be able to gain the portability, which is so important for us to be able to do, because we still believe, although we are seeing that the uptick is happening very, very quickly in the public cloud. And I wish it was easy for us to bring every single customer to the public cloud, but we still have clients that insist either that we run them in our data center or they want to go on-prem. So until we can convince all of them to move to the public cloud and get the benefits that we actually see on the next couple of pages, where I don't have to focus on building the infrastructure services. Today, I spend between 1/8 and 1/10 of all of my staff just procuring hardware, building capacity, patching it, all of these things that I really, really don't want to do, frankly, because it doesn't provide me with a significant amount of value. The value comes that I can focus on my application and build my applications and my IP, so I can go sell that to the clients in whatever cloud environments they want to run at. And that brings me to when I go to the AWS, that whole bucket, I don't have to worry about anymore. I don't have to worry about these things, so I can get started faster. I can deliver my services at a much, much, much faster pace. And I can deliver it, as I said, with security in mind. I can deliver it with the regulatory pieces in mind, which is truly important to me. And what that brings me to is the lesson learned. There is definitely one thing, and that is AWS is extremely good as a partner. You'll hear a little bit about when we talk about financial governance and regions, number 4 on this slide. It's so easy to deploy on AWS. So if we didn't put governance in place, and that's what we saw, a lot of our developers would just start up and they'll go crazy on AWS. They may not worry about bringing down instances. They may not worry about spot instances or reserved instances, etc. So you'll see the bill stacking up very fast. But then I also have to say, partnering with AWS, this was a big surprise to us. I haven't had a lot of other vendors that came into me when we brought up the issues. I had a lot of vendors that came to me and said, hey, we'll help you save money. And we listened to them. In this case, AWS, when we talked to them about this particular issue, they came back to us and they actually said, yeah, we'll help you save money. And they brought the data and the best practices in terms of how you control your environment from a financial services. As I said, I don't get that from any other enterprise vendor of mine. This is a true partnership that we're seeing. Automation framework has been mentioned a couple of times. I think that is key. If you don't build the automation frameworks and all the API-enabled infrastructure that they have enable you to do so. So build the automation framework up from the get-go. That means that you can provision either regions from the get-go, and you build all the test automation into the automation framework that you utilize, and then you can build your product automation that sits on top of it. It's all possible because it's all truly API-enabled. We talked about the Kubernetes maturing. I'm very excited about the services, again, that AWS is providing. It's really giving us a great, great platform that makes us portable because of the K8 standardization across different services. And then the last piece I would say, have AWS guide you. They have seen a lot of different implementations. We know that we don't know everything. We know that we need to learn from the best and brightest in the industry. They're very good at bringing in use cases and have seen certain scenarios in the past that we can benefit from. They're very willing to come to you and help you and bring some of the use cases, bring some of the domain expertise that you may need when we start implementing new services. So it's not only the learning that you'll see here at reInvent, it's the ongoing learning and support that they'll provide as you are on your journey to the public cloud. So that was the last slide. I want to wish you all a great reInvent, and thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Klaus. And you mentioned the spirit of partnership that we've had together. We certainly enjoy that with FICO and all of the 4 companies that presented today. So think about these 4 trusted brands and reflect on what we've accomplished together. And as they all mentioned, all of our speakers mentioned, there's so much more we can do together. So I would like to thank, and maybe collectively, we could give a round of applause to all of our CIOs. where will we be next year? Next year, we'll be where you want us to be. And we believe in creating a future together. This spirit of partnership that we feel is demonstrated with our speakers today is something that hopefully we enjoy with all of you. As much as we feel we provide value to our customers and providing the levels of counsel and advice and experience, we are learning as much, if not more, from you. So we look together to build this new future. So thank you for spending this hour with us. I hope you found it valuable and enjoy the rest of reInvent. Have a good day.